So let me rest your minds at ease. Brevity is the soul of wit. It's not going to be a long presentation. It's going to be succinct. We're going to get down to the heart of the matter. We got to hit the lights. So before we start, Nebula has nothing to do with it. Can everyone do me a favor? We had a fallen brother yesterday. Guillermo got in a pretty serious motorcycle accident. We know him as Ink at the Widow Sons. He's a widow son. Everybody say a little prayer while we're getting this geared up for Guillermo to have a fast recovery for us. There's nothing he could have done to prevent it. He was driving 30, 35 miles an hour. I was at the scene. He got T-boned. Somebody ran a stop sign and just hit him, probably doing about 40 miles an hour, crushed his bike. Luckily right now he just has a broken leg and a concussion. I gotta also give credit to Constantine. Although these are my ideas, he's the one who set this all up and did the packaging for me. So without further ado, see if we can get it going. So the origins of the Widow Sons, where do we come from? Well, believe it or not, the idea of the Widow Sons came up in about 1998 in Chicago. A guy named Carl Davenport. He was in a little cafe with 4 or 5 of his brother Masons, and they all like to ride motorcycles. And he thought to himself, it'd be great if we had like a Masonic riding group. And then they came up with the name the Widow Sons. And because every riding group needs a charity, right? You gotta have a charity. And their idea of the charity was to raise money for the widows of Masons and their sons, right? All of them. So that's all about he did. He did a very rudimentary website, but didn't really go any further with it. Just 5 guys, they didn't have vests, they didn't have any patches, they had nothing. So in about 2000, and this is what the Widow Sons are, they're a riding association, which is different than a motorcycle club. Just so you know, in the motorcycle world, an MC is like the Outlaws, or what's that?
1%.
Right, they're 1%ers. They're the guys that are running drugs and killing people. We're a riding association, which is different. And then you can read that the next slide. All right, the meaning of the widow. I'm going to give you the short version. You can read that as I'm talking if you want. They came up with the idea of the patch, the widow, because she's supposed to be just sad and grieving for her husband who's dead, her Master Mason husband who's dead, grabbing her head and trying to think, how is she going to provide for herself and the family? Okay? So the idea behind the Riding Association was we were going to raise money for people like this, and we do a lot of that, but not. Let me back up a little bit. You know how a lot of our presentations are about esoteric and existential things, like Worshipful did one on Stoicism and meditation, and that's great, and that's a huge part of Masonry, and it's important. This presentation is a little bit more about the fellowship, the part of Masonry where we get together with our brethren, and we hang out and we ride and we do all kinds of great things. Not to say we don't have esoteric conversations, because after a couple beers, Right Worshipful Albert will talk you under the table for 3 hours about Red Lodge and Green Lodge and Blue Lodge and stuff you've never even heard about before. So we have those conversations too. It's not devoid of that, but it's more about the fellowship between men riding motorcycles and things of that nature. So if you've already read this, so the idea behind it was, if you're a widow's son, you have the patch, you have your vest, also known as the cut, that you wear every time you're on your motorcycle, and you belong to a bigger group, a brotherhood. So the Widow Sons have been around now for 20 years, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. Like I told you, 1998 was when Carl Davenport came up with the idea, but he didn't do anything with it. A guy named Army Nunez, which you're going to actually see him in his own words, in around 2000, 1999, 2000, he's a Mason in Florida, and he was like also interested. Great minds think alike. Maybe Carl put it out in the universe, And Army Nunez picked it up, and he thought, I want to start a Masonic writing group. And he started searching on the web, which at the time, back then, wasn't as big as it is now. As you know, back in 2000, the World Wide Web was smaller. And he came across this rudimentary website. So he called Carl Davenport on the phone, and Army Nunez started the patches and the vest and started organizing in Florida. So there are 2 patches for the Widow Sons, and after you hear Army Nunez speak, because we have a clip of him giving a seminar to the Widow Sons, you'll see the difference. But in Florida, as you can see on our vests, and let me have all the Widow Sons stand up, whether they have a vest or not, because a bunch of them came here to support me. So probably people you didn't even know are Widow Sons. These guys, every time we're riding together around on our motorcycles, we're wearing our vests with our patches. That's the patch on the left. That's the original Widow Sons patch. You read the slide before what it means. It's a widow grieving for her husband, concerned about where she's going to get her next meal and support her family. The patch on the right, Widow Sons, we call it the chicken wings. They don't like it when you call it that, but it looks like chicken wings on a pyramid. All right, guys. That was created a few years later, and the idea was because Carl Davenport's wife didn't like the idea of the widow, and the story we got was because of her cleavage and she's sexy or who knows, but he wanted to come up with a different patch. True, right, Walker? Yeah. Walker's the president of our Widow Sons Eastwood Riders. So she didn't like the patch, so they decided they were going to come up with a different patch. That patch on the right really doesn't represent the Widow Sons if you look at it, because it doesn't have any connection. It has connection with Masons for sure. It's got all the Masonic symbols and whatnot, but it doesn't have any connection with the riding group and how it was originally formulated and for why it was formulated. So this is, you're going to see a clip of Army Nunez. I apologize for the quality of the video. We didn't do the video. Somebody else did, and apparently they didn't know how to set up the projector. There we go. No, it's all right. One more forward and hit play.
Technical problems.
No, don't worry. There we go.
That's the Widow Sons logo.
Right, that's the logo for the Widow Sons. And this is Army Nunez. It's kind of like a side view. It's
How did we get here? First, let me give you a disclaimer. What I want to share with you are my recollections, but I stand by them. What I want to share with you is what I know I experienced and what I saw when I was there. I'm not here to speak ill about anybody. However, I am here to hopefully bring some clarity and perspective to the history of the Widow Sons. During my tenure, I charted several states as well as the first active chapter across the Atlantic. I worked with Brother Ray Brandy in England to get them started. So everything else that has taken off from there is based on the good work that Brother Ray did. Brother and his wife, Ray and his wife, Zena, have experienced some health problems, so he's kind of inactive at the moment. But he was the first Widow Son in England. I also put together the bylaws that are used by Florida. And I understand that they're the basis for what several other states are using with, amendments and changes based on what you need for your locality. So how did we get where we are? Well, several years ago, I was looking for something that could help me combine my 2 interests at the time, masonry and writing. I've been writing since I was 18 years old, and bear in mind since I'm only 30, it hasn't been that long. So I started searching and happened to stumble upon a rudimentary website that Carl Davenport had set up. So I contacted him and I joined in the conversation. At that point, to my knowledge, there were no patched or well-organized chapters writing. The organization was in what I would call its forming stage. If any of you have taken any management courses, I'll get off subject here a little bit. I teach university courses too. Organizations go through some stages. They're forming, they're storming, and they're norming. And unfortunately, we've gone from norming right back to storming right now. But their organization, we just kind of in flux. We just kind of start to build. There was a lot of discussion as to what the Widow Sons patch should be. And Carl Davenport was already using what some we now jokingly refer to as Elvira as the emblem on the website. My understanding from Carl at that point was that he had come up with that design, as it was emblematic of a grieving widow. She has an ashen face, and her right hand is on her head in a sign of anguish. That, brethren, regardless of what anybody tells you, is the original and authentic widow's son's emblem.
Right.
It was decided that the widow would be our symbol. It was already being used, had some, feeling to it, etc. So I took on the responsibility of getting the first patches made. I fronted the money. I went out and found a supplier. We started making the patches. Let me explain to you why the widow is what we decided on. Our idea was the widow would be a little edgy. Our idea was that being a little edgy, we might be able to attract some men that maybe weren't attracted to, suit and tie masonry.
So that's kind of important, what he said the last little bit. Masonry isn't known to a lot of people, obviously. You hear about it, but you don't know about it, and you're not necessarily attracted to it if you don't know somebody in it. But if you see a bunch of guys riding around on Harley Davidsons or motorcycles with their cuts on and their patch of the widow's sons, and you see them at a bar, you're gonna ask them questions. I know this because they almost ask me every time I'm out on my motorcycle, and they wanna know about it. And they think it's great, and they think it's cool, and it gets them interested in masonry. So not all Masons wear suit and ties. I mean, I kind of transgress both worlds, right? I wear a suit and tie every day. I'm a lawyer, and I got sleeve tattoos and crazy stuff you can't see when I'm wearing my shirt. But not all Masons wear suit and ties, and not all guys that have tattoos are bad and wouldn't be great for masonry. So it kind of bridges the gap there and exposes masonry to people that wouldn't normally necessarily be exposed to masonry, and it attracts them. Next slide. So what am I as a widow's son? This is like something we kind of hold dear, because once you've been riding with people for a long time, and towards the end of this presentation we'll get to the rides, you develop a bond, because you really you depend on each other quite a bit when you're out on the road and you're on a long ride, or you're out from home and you got nothing, just your motorcycle and the gear you can carry. So you end up becoming more than just what we call brothers. I mean, I'll give you an example, it's not just words. Guillermo got in a serious car accident yesterday on his motorcycle. Who was the first person he called? Me. He didn't call his wife, he didn't call the police, he called me. Brother, I'm in a serious car accident. Where are you? 68th and Northeast 1st. Hang up with me, you idiot. Call 911, I'll be right there. So I'm driving up on sidewalks and to get there. I get there, he goes off in the ambulance, I secure the scene, I stay there, I'm left, I can't tell you what undone, because he needed me. And that's what it means to be a widow's son. Really stick together. If somebody needs you, you're there no matter what. So this is something we always say, am I my brother's keeper? I'm not his judge, I'm not his accuser, I'm not his stumbling block, no judgment, but I am his keeper. Next slide. So this is something we use at the Eastwood Riders.
Pinky blinders.
I don't need to read it, you can read it yourself. But we stick up for one another, no matter what.
We do for sure.
Right, because we're brothers, and we're all Masons, but we're all part of the riding group, and we spend a lot of time together. Not only do we have meetings once a week, but this is a thing posted before you call me brother. It's not just a name. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. You can read it for yourself. It means you're something more than a friend. You choose your brothers. I know everyone thinks brothers are related by blood, and I have one related by blood. He hates me. He always has. And we're not close at all. But me and Guillermo, me and Walker, me and Constantine, Pablo, Ephraim, Daniel, those are my brothers. Those are guys I would call. I would never call him to help me. You know what I mean? I mean, you're fortunate if you get along with your brother, and it's by coincidence, accident, or good raising. I don't know what it is. But me and my brother, he's only 2 years older than me. I mean, I'll tell you, he was a cop in Hollywood, he'd give me a ticket. I promise you. So that's the truth. So this is what it means to be a brother. When you know that that person's there no matter what. And that's a mantra of the Eastwood Riders, which is our club. In other words, the Widow's Sons are huge. We're gonna get to that in a minute. But our chapter is called the Eastwood Riders. We have, I think, 27 or 28 members, 27 members right now. Go ahead, next slide.
Active members.
Active, right. We're also about charity. I love this clip.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just the Bahamas, it's basically Brotherhood everywhere around the world. We're here now to help our brothers in Abaco and Grand Bahama with what we can. Start off just a couple boxes, brothers bringing stuff in, and as you can see now, we've gathered quite a bit of items and more to come. You know, with the help of Marathon Lodge, Key West Lodge, Royal Palm Lodge, and the Widow's Sons. We've been collecting items throughout the Keys.
What is Widows?
It's it's Widow's Sons. It's a motorcycle group for Masons, and it's the Eastwood Riders chapter in Miami. They're the ones that are helping out as well.
I love that.
What's important about that is, and if you catch it, even the reporter hears Widow's, what is Widow's Sons? He wants to know about it. And then you tell them about it, and then they get interested. He's a reporter, so he's doing his job, he continues. If they were just someone out in the public, you'd be talking for 45 minutes, you'd have to make them go away. They want to hear more and more and more. Go ahead, next slide. So we also get invited to certain things. This was a parade for Jose Martin, Hialeah, and they had us in the parade. We're there with the mayor of Hialeah, and I don't have a clip of it, but there's a big string of motorcycles with everyone likes bikers, right, in a parade. So we're riding down the middle of Main Street or whatever it is in Hialeah, and did all kinds of photo ops, not just with him, everybody wanted pictures with us. Next. We meet at, of course, a bar. First Wednesday of every month.
Duffy's Tavern.
At Duffy's Tavern, they give us our whole room by ourselves. We have our meetings there. Typically, almost all the members show up to the meetings. This last meeting, I think we had like 16 people, maybe 20 people. Meeting before that, we had like 22 or 23 people. Other people can't sometimes come, like Carlos is always out of town, arbitrating or doing something. But yeah, so our meetings are held once a month. We require, if you're gonna be part of the Widow's Sons, that you attend at least, I think, 2 meetings at a minimum?
6 meetings.
6 meetings and 2 riding events.
2 major events.
And 2 major events.
Forgive me, guys.
That's
I
okay.
thought I turned this off.
That's an Eastwood Rider.
That's Eastwood Rider, yeah. Next. All right, so one of our rides is called Romp in the Swamp. That's been around for 8 years. It's hard to see because the picture's bad, but there's about 88 people showed up to Romp in the Swamp. We ride out to Okeechobee, a lot of fellowship going on. We go to the Shriners Club. Next slide. There we are at the Shriners Club eating a fish fry. We also go to breakfast at the lodge there, the Masons Lodge there. Next slide. The guy who started Romp in the Swamp was a guy named Theo. He died in 2018 from, I think, Lou Gehrig's disease. ALS, sorry. So we actually raised a bunch of money for him. We'll show you next slide. And to the right, you can kind of see me there. That's when we were in one of our esoteric conversations with Right Worshipful Albert, if I remember, if you remember. About a 3-hour conversation. Sometimes when you're sitting, I think all the great philosophers used to sit and drink and philosophize over wine. Am I wrong? I'm right on, right? That's what we used to do. Well, that's what we were doing that night. All right, next slide.
We had our own band and everything.
Oh yeah, we had a band. Another ride that the Ashlers started. Ashlers is the group up in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm going to get to how many groups there are. They have a blessing of the bikes, and we ride out to Markham Park, and we spend the weekend. It's great. You got big open fires. Everyone's camping, or they got campers, and they do a blessing of the bikes, which is a really cool thing. Because when you're on those motorcycles, everybody's out to get you. You don't think they are, but they really are. They're just not paying attention. They're on their cell phones. They're you know, they don't appreciate the danger. Next. So, I was able to go to this, which is great. It was a grand gathering last year in 2019. I think we had over 880 widow sons show up there from around the world. So ask yourself, when's the last time you got to hang out with Masons from the Philippines, Germany,
Canada,
Brazil,
Mexico,
Canada, Mexico,
Finland.
The 50 states.
all 50 states, over 880 widow sons. That's not even all the widow sons in the world. That's the people that came to the gathering. There are widow sons that span the globe now, and it's because of the fellowship. You know, the bond, the brotherhood. It's hard to explain. Next slide. So that kind of concludes our presentation. That's our group, the Eastward Riders. We meet, as you can see, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. at Duffy's.
that's Czar.
What's that? And that's Czar. Let me tell you about Czar. Czar is a gnome. He's a widow's son gnome, which I promise you, if you keep him in your house, you're going to have bad dreams. Creepy. But when you first become a prospect in the Widow's Sons, you're given the responsibility of taking care of Czar. And when you go to these gatherings, you charge people $5 to have their picture taken with Czar. And then we always have like a little competition who could raise the most money. And that money goes to the Masonic home, right? As you might imagine. If you're smart, you bring a bottle of Macallan and you give them a shot with each one, and you make $300-400, which blew away any competition there was.
That's a lawyer right there.
Yeah, and that is the end of my presentation. Thanks to everyone for paying attention. Oh, wait, does anybody have any questions? I guess you can turn the lights.
Good job, brother.
Anybody? Man, I'm blinded.
The different chapters in Florida.
Yeah.
We got
How many?
17.
Yeah, how many?
There's 17 different chapters. So you got the Crusaders, the Templars, the Ashers, the Eastward Riders,
X&M,
that always screws me up because it's a bunch of letters. XXLM,
Bicota,
that's right, Bicota, that's up in like
West
Jackson.
Palm, West Palm.
Yeah, I said Crusaders, West Palm, that's the Bicota. I can't name them all.
There's no reciprocity between and among
When you say reciprocity, what do you mean?
a member of one means also a member of the other.
Well, we're all widow sons, and
Right.
we're actually in the process of changing the back patch. It's still gonna be widow sons, but you're not gonna have the rocker that says Eastward Riders, because the widow sons feel first you're a Mason, then you're a widow son. And then your chapter is the rocker's gonna be on the side here, that got passed. And, so you'll have your rocker on the side, but it won't be from the back. So
Your chapter.
really, your chapter will be on the side, it won't be on the back. So widow sons is one unit. That's how we see ourselves. You know this, but
We're trying to make the whole state look the same.
right. We all want to look the same. It's like you pull into town with 1,000 riders. More impressive.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
How does the low 12 rider do that?
The low 12 riders. Yeah, that's interesting. We're actually bringing them on to the Eastward Riders. The low 12 is now down to low 5, even though they're called the low 12. They're a Masonic riding group, but they're not recognized.
No.
And I mean, Walker could probably tell you a little bit more about that. The president of the Widow Sons is here.
Yeah,
Still
they're
brothers.
They're good guys. They're still brothers. Don't get me wrong,
Oh, yeah.
but they're not. Yeah, good guys. And we've been talking to them. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing I was going to say. I mean, when you Widow Sons, you got past worshipful masters, you got right worshipful masters, you got every guys that have gone through every level of Masonic, Templars, all that stuff. I mean, when you talk to them over a couple of beers, be surprised. Some of these guys have been doing
I
this.
thought that Zara was actually Rosine. Is that kind of
No. We used to joke about that, when it first came out.
Right. So you can learn a lot. You know what I mean? How you always talk about Masonic learning and just listening. You really can learn a lot from these guys. You see guys with tattoos all over their arms, and you find out that he was like the district deputy or something, and you know everything else in the world. And you're talking, and you're like, God, this guy knows more about masonry than I'll ever know. What is your question?
Brother, does your bike need to be a lowrider?
No, it needs to be okay to be a widow son. And you didn't hear that part from Army Nunez. You need to be a Mason. You need to have a motorcycle that's 750.
500.
Oh, is it 500? I thought it was 750. Sorry, 500 cc's or more.
Okay.
That's it. So if it's more than 500 cc's, you're widow son, and you need a motorcycle license.
There you go.
We require that.
And you gotta know how to ride.
And you gotta be active at Dodge.
Right, you gotta be active at the lodge. We're changing our bylaws to make that a mandatory thing, because, too many people join just to get the vest and then you never see them again. And they just disappear. You're like,
Yeah, I recently got mine and I'm thinking of getting a 600 CBR.
you're in.
There you go.
Come on over.
Come to the meeting.
Yeah, come to a meeting. And then, because I'm not yet a master mason, here, turn around.
The patch.
You see the patch above the Eastward Riders? You get that when you're a master mason. I'm not a master mason.
I write every day, bro.
You have a
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
You have a
you can
year.
barely see it. You have a year. Once you join the Widow's Sons, if you're an EA or a fellow craft, you have a year to become a master mason. You get your patch. Once you get your patch, you then become branded. Does anybody have a brand? Oh, look, everybody except me. Yeah. So what they do is it's over here. It's a secret ritual, because we have degrees in the Widow's Sons as well, and they brand you a Widow's Son.
That makes you official.
And it makes you an official, and you'll see a lot, like if you have any friends that are Masons on the internet, they'll say raised a Mason, branded a Widow's Son. It'll say stuff like that, and that's what that's referring to. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What would you consider active?
Active?
Active in Blue Lodge.
You gotta be active in your Blue Lodge, so you have to actually still be a card-carrying Mason that pays your dues. And then active in our chapter, you have to make at least 6 meetings in a year. That's not terrible. And then 2 rides.
2 events.
I think that's great.
2 events.
Two major
Well,
events.
because you don't just, it's all about fellowship, right? It's all about camaraderie and brotherhood. You guys have heard me use those words before. And if you're not active in the group, then you're not really participating. You're not having fellowship. You're not having camaraderie. You're not a part of the brotherhood. I don't know what you are.
Wanna be.
You just want to be one of us, but you're not. So you guys, some of you guys know a little about me. I was in the military for a long time. I've been in 2 different militaries, Army and in the Navy for over 10 years. And I think when I first came here, you heard me stand up that it's hard now as an adult being an attorney, having the type of brotherhood and camaraderie that I had in the military. I mean, these guys, I trusted them with my lives. I mean, we went into crazy situations and you never worried. And this is about as close as you can get to that without being in the military or something like that, if that makes any sense. Because you feel like these guys have your back, you're not concerned. Any other questions? Nope.
Well, I just want to commend you, brother. This goes for the Eastward Riders and also for the Hibiscus Lodge brothers and also for the incoming brothers. Here you have an mentor apprentice that's doing a badass presentation, and excuse my language. I think that's something that we could take as an example, and Worshipful Master, you are pushing this in your year, and I also want to commend you for that. Education is such an important part of Masonic education. Press, do you want to have some words?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Walker.
Brother, nice job.
Thank you.
Worshipful Master, awesome job. Brothers, thank you, man. You guys are awesome.
Join us.
Join us.
Definitely, I'm actually gonna go over there and join you guys.
You gotta
You can come to a meeting without a bike.
Definitely, yeah. I'll go there with my skateboard.
I told you to come hang out.
I bought one of my bikes, I got 2.
For the visitors, we hope that you enjoyed it. We actually meet every second Tuesday of the month at 6:30. You can join us for dinner.